Hi, this is Paul Davids, and I'm sure you haven't missed out on the fact that John Mayer released a new song called I Guess I Just Feel Like. And the song is cool and all, but what I really wanted to do is talk about that solo, because I've noticed some pretty cool things going on in there, and I'd like to share that with you. But first, let's listen to two different takes of my playing over the same progression, and maybe you'll notice something interesting. Let's have a listen. Heard something different? Let me explain. The basic chord pattern that is played during the entire solo piece is just a B and an E. And if you really analyze it, it feels like the B sounds more like a B5, also known as a power chord. This means there is just a root and a fifth in the chord, so no third. And the third is the note that determines whether the chord is major or minor. Without that note, it can be a bit ambiguous what is meant. But I think we can safely assume that the function of the chord is B major because the same progression is played earlier in the song, where he clearly plays a D sharp in the B chord, making it obviously major, of course. So now back to the solo, because that's what I wanted to talk about, if I remember correctly. Listening to John play over this progression for 7 minutes gave me some interesting insights. First of all, he mainly uses the B minor pentatonic scale over the entire progression, which is quite interesting, but not really surprising. Let me explain. As we said, the function of the chord is B major. So if we would follow that major feel of the song itself, he would have played B major pentatonic over the pattern, like this. And funny enough, that is mostly what he's playing before the solo actually starts, during the entire song basically.
Mostly? What do you mean with mostly?
Yeah, mostly because a lot of it is major pentatonic, but there is the occasional Mixolydian touch in there. But don't worry, I'll explain that later.
So the song is in the key of B major. The chord pattern is in B major. He solos in B major, but why did you say the end solo is in B minor? Well, the same chords are playing.
Okay, that is a very good question. Let me first start with the chord pattern of the solo itself. Again, it's mostly just B and E, two notes with a transitioning bass note in between, an A. The individual notes from the chords sort of dictate the note choices we have to make in order to make our solo or melody sound good over the entire progression. So we've got the notes from B major, B, D sharp, F sharp. The notes from E major, E, G sharp and B. And the notes from A, although it's not a chord, but we can just fill it in, A, C sharp and E. Put these notes together and you can see that we've created the Mixolydian scale. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp and A. But this is a fairly complicated way to look at it, to be honest. Dissecting the chords and throwing the notes in a bucket to see what scale we get. My approach is basically twofold. One, and the easiest one for me, experience. Each scale has a certain flavor, and if you learn to recognize it, it's easy to hear. And two, just by looking at the chords and applying some logic. So let's say we start with the B major chord. The options we've got to play over this are huge. We can play major, major pentatonic, Lydian, Mixolydian, minor pentatonic or Dorian to get bluesy, diminished to get jazzy, whatever. But the more chords we introduce to the pattern, the more it starts to hang to a certain sound. So if we add the A bass note and the E major chord after this, there is one very logical option, which is Mixolydian. All the chords fall beautifully in the B Mixolydian scale, so now we can safely assume that Mixolydian will sound great on these chords. But how will that sound? Well, like this. So it doesn't clash anywhere, the notes correspond with the chords, it has to be good. But it doesn't quite feel right, does it? It doesn't sound nowhere near what ended up on the record.
Okay, so why is that?
Well, that is the question. And I think it's a very good question with a pretty short answer. The answer is blues. You see, a thing often heard in blues music is playing with a minor feel over a major chord. And that dissonance, it symbolizes the pain, the sadness. We don't say feeling blue for nothing. And although the B in this case isn't played as a dominant 7th chord, we can easily treat it as such. That minor feel is established by the minor 3rd interval, also called the sharp 9 in a major chord, and it has a dissonant feel on top of that major 3rd from the chord itself. In the song, he jumps from a very major and optimistic feel, where he's clearly playing and singing very major sounding melodies over those major chords. He jumps to a minor feel. And that switch from optimistic to a sadder tone happens just after he sang the last sentence of the song. I guess I just felt like giving up today. And isn't that feeling, that very last sentence, is that not the ideal starting point of a great blues solo? Let your guitar speak for you. Tell him what you really feel like. Express the sadness with your solo. One great thing you can do to let your guitar speak is bending that minor 3rd just slightly towards the major 3rd. You can call this a blue note, where you play the note at a slightly different pitch than standard, which is just a beautiful way of expressing yourself. And almost always when John plays the 3rd, he does add this little trick to that note. Besides, I think such an epic end solo just screams for that bluesy feel. A solo like this just asks for that minor 3rd. Keeping it major can sound, what's the word? Cheesy. And I think that is exactly the problem with what I was playing before, that Mixolydian sound. It sounded good, but it was a bit cheesy. Of course not always though, it really has a lot to do with the meaning and the character of the song. Take a look at Need Your Love So Bad by Fleetwood Mac, for example. That has a very Mixolydian or major blues feel to me. But it sounds far from cheesy. So he's clearly just seeing this as a blues solo, which, as I said earlier, is far from surprising considering John is mainly a blues guy. Blues guitar player, blues singer-songwriter, blues fanboy, whatever. But there is one other very interesting thing I wanted to point out. Last week I met up with a friend talking guitars and gear, you know how it goes. And of course this song was a topic of conversation. And he noticed that it was very striking to see that in his solo he almost never went to the 4 chord. He's very reluctant in outlining that E major chord in his solo, and he just sticks to B minor pentatonic, mostly. So when I talked to my friend, we both said that if we would have played that solo, we would always go right for that 4 chord, giving it a very Dorian feel, so minor with a raised 6. And that 6 is the major note of the E chord, so you're clearly outlining the chord pattern, painting the picture with your note choices. The first time he does this is with that iconic tapping lick, briefly touching that G sharp note in there. There is some sort of reservation to his solo. He never goes all the way. He really tries not to overplay things. It's not packed with notes. He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone, holding back, not giving you what you want, which makes you want it even more and makes it so enjoyable to listen to. You want to hear it again and try to hear new subtleties in there. So that was a bit of a talk about a solo he probably didn't think about that much, but that's not the point. You can say a lot about split-second choices someone makes, analyze why he's playing certain notes, why it sounds the way it sounds. And through these analyses you can try to take something with you the next time you're in the line of fire, recording your own solo or on stage. You can just stop thinking and say, I guess I just feel like letting the guitar speak for me, instead of thinking too much. Anyways, this was Paul. Thank you so much for watching. The backing track I made is available on my Patreon page. So if you enjoyed any of this and you just feel like supporting me, you may consider signing up. Or to show some appreciation, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Cheers.
So now, after all the information I gave you, let's go back to the first two examples I gave you. Can you now tell me what the difference is?